Yep.
Okay, we're live. All right. Senate Transportation Committee, we're reconvening after a brief recess. We had an item brought to our attention probably a week ago from former Senator Tim Ash. He's now Deputy Auditor of State of Vermont. And we didn't, well, we glanced through it, but I just thought we'd discuss it one more time, the pros and the cons about it, so we can respond to or give an answer to prior Senator Tim Ash, who we all know very well. And if someone could explain it to us, I would be very thankful. I have not read the details about it, but if Michelle or Andy, go right ahead. Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't know. It's fine. Just so we know what we're talking about and whether we favor it or we don't favor it.
Okay, so for the record, Anthony Dexter Cooper from the Office of Legislative Counsel. Do you want me to put it up on the screen, or it seems like you're all hard copies, so
Whatever you think is easier.
let's just use paper.
Okay.
It seems easier. So it looks like a lot. It's 9 pages. The recommendations that came from the auditor's office are what is highlighted in yellow with some like small tweaks from me to sort of better conform to how we draft. All of the other unhighlighted language, and there's a lot of small changes there, has to do with me just spending time in section 10G and thinking like maybe there would be some benefit to having some subsection headings here. So I think for purposes of your discussion now, ignore everything except for what's highlighted. And then if you decide to do anything with the proposal, then I can work with the agency to make sure they think these are good technical corrections. But I've already talked to Michelle about how nothing's going to happen with this language. This whole me wanting to make 10G read a little bit better thing can be ignored until a future point. So with that explanation for.
Yes, go ahead.
One of the things that seemed to be inherent or was talked about in the auditor's report of the paving program was the not having the documentation that would be the basis for which their costs were higher or there were delays. And so it was to me, it was saying that this is kind of a fluid process. And you may have started out, it got on the press, it appeared as though it was much more substantive than we were told, and that was that there were probably legitimate reasons that some of the projects were delayed, but there was no record to document what caused those delays. So it would appear, that something was going to cost 5 million, ended up costing 10 or 15. So my question, and looking at this, is there an effort to, or would that just be done administratively to address that finding? And that is, there are projects that come on and for a variety of reasons, cost goes up, or maybe something else is identified that needs to be incorporated and that needs to be documented. So my question is one of protocols that the agency would put in place to sort of provide that record of why that amount changed or the project or the scope might have changed, as opposed to what is being presented here. And I need to just ask, is this language here in any way deal with that documentation issue that seemed to be the dominant theme in that presentation?
So I think that you're gonna get a much more comprehensive answer on this from the agency. So I'm so glad that they're
You
here.
just say yes or no, is it in here or not?
This would provide, I can't say yes or no, I'm terrible at those questions. This would provide like discrete trigger points for when things need to be reported to the General Assembly and when something would need to be included in the project update section of the white book. But all the paper documentation, everything, that's gonna be an agency question.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Yes.
And I think what was really missed in a lot of this, and I had raised it before when it was talked about when the deputy auditor was in, is that the committee process of our discussions with AOT and DMV and all of that, I think was kind of left out in the audit. A lot of it made it sound like we weren't made aware, when in the committee process, I felt that we've always been made aware. We've always been able to understand where all the projects are. I mean, so familiar with them as fact that we already know the answers lots of times before it's even discussed about where this project is. And I think that a lot of that was left out in this report of the relationship that we have as a committee with AOT.
Michelle, would you like to comment, please?
Yes, so I think as the committee has recognized over the years, we use an asset management process to deliver the right project at the right time. And this considers changes in our asset conditions year to year. So something we thought we were going to move forward this year, all of a sudden another project became critically imminent. And so that will also sometimes involve project scope changes, schedules, and costs. So we recognize that the auditor identified a few projects that had changes that were significant. And what we found when we sort of looked at the cross section of everything, that it was not as anomalous as perhaps the auditor would have gathered from his selected items that were looked on. But we are moving forward with looking at the recommendations in the auditor's report, and we are going to be including additional documentation of the scope, the cost, the schedule changes, as well as reviewing the benefit of additional performance measures, which was one of the key things that the auditor mentioned. And this
So
will
those are being done in response to
the audit, yeah. So this will allow for additional information to be on file when interested parties reach out. But we are a bit concerned about, even with the trigger point, because of the volume of projects that we operate with on an annual basis, that the need to report information on projects before they get into the construction phase, like we do in the 10G report, and provide emails whenever there's a schedule change, could result in a lot of communications with the General Assembly that they may or may not be able to review. And currently we have the V-Transparency platform where you can monitor project details that are coming up within the next 3 years in terms of what we're doing. And I would also say the audit specifically looked at the paving program and changes changing the statute would affect all programs, not just the paving program, because we need to monitor every type of project that we deliver. And we just want to find something that's going to create the information that is needed if somebody wants to see the information and not overburden folks. The project delivery team is in the process of looking at the last 5 to 10 years of paving projects through the same lens as the auditor did, and believes that it will show that what we're doing is much better than the audit items that were selected. So we will be able to reflect upon that and can certainly report back on that as well. But we've been consistently meeting our current project delivery goals over the last 5 years plus of delivering the right project at the right time while adjusting to be nimble when outside impacts such as inflation, material shortages, and new programs such as funding under the IIJA have become available. And we find this is in line with what our tri-state partners, New Hampshire and Maine, are doing. One of the things we discovered in this process was, and I'm not suggesting we do this, but New Hampshire, Maine, and I believe Massachusetts, none of them bring they bring the white book with just the summary sheet of the appropriations. They don't bring all the background information on every project to the General Assembly on an annual basis. I think it provides a lot of context and benefit that we do it and are able to do it in that way. But I guess we would be concerned if we were legislated to deliver the type of reporting that was suggested by the auditor. It appears to be an infringement of the administrative, the separation of powers in terms of detailed administration of the Agency of Transportation by the legislature, so that was viewed as a concern as well.
Is there any way we could put some response as you're speaking, in writing, and give it to them? Reasons why we're.
I think we've already done that
Done that.
through the audit response.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we've let him know what we plan to
Okay.
do. And Aaron, you're familiar with the audit response. I don't know what else you would add to that. And you might want to.
Yeah, for the record, Aaron Sisson, the deputy chief engineer. So yeah, we did respond and it's actually attached to the audit, I believe, in the back of the appendices, but it does outline our intent to move forward with the recommendations on our end to do additional documentation.
Did he get that audit and he still sent this, or this is after he sent this?
It was before, so he sent this after he read our letter.
So evidently he's not satisfied with what's happening.
Well, asking something more, I
Yeah.
guess. This is, the language here is designed for, I guess, more accountability or more information to
I
us.
think the problem we're trying to solve isn't there. I don't see what the,
Yeah, my concern, I think, more information could be helpful, but I don't think anybody's gonna read those.
no,
Like, I don't know if anybody reads one of the one that goes over 50%. That's
10G report.
10G reports. I see them in the book every year, but has anybody ever questioned you about those 10G reports?
Well, we report out on them, so.
And you guys have actually gone down through them with us. You guys have done them, yeah.
we've never been in the dark about any projects. I mean, I just, I didn't know what the comp.
I think we're made aware of any projects that has been, turned into a problem. Yeah, I don't think there's been anything I've ever seen and said, oh my God, what's going on there? I think we've always been very well apprised of.
Plus, I might add that the bids, for example, we had that bid a year ago, was a $10 million paving bid, and the lowest bid was 16 million. I mean, that happens. I mean, what are you gonna do?
Right, and he's not saying, I think, the
No,
auditor
that's
seems to
bidding
be
side,
saying,
right.
like, report more on that stuff, basically.
In the earlier stages, I think was where he was focused.
Because I don't know, what would we do differently? Like, if we got that data, that's what I
We
was.
just say thank you for telling us why it's delayed, I
Some
suspect.
people like to read AOT reports.
Yeah. I'm not-
I haven't met them, I
I would say they probably had a sleep problem.
Yeah, right.
I guess this is really for us to say, for me, it's like, you're saying that this would require additional work. You're gonna deal with the documentation so that there's a better record internally, project by project, which I thought was the real concern. Sometimes it was permitting, sometimes it wasn't. I'm sure the Route 2 project that's, done, that was 20 years in the making, probably which was tied up in Act 250, would have gone through a lot of different scoping and cost upgrades. So I think the question for us is, this language is really telling AOT what we should be getting and what they needed to report to us. And the fundamental question is, this
Doing more.
information we need,
Yeah.
will we use it? What is the
Right.
utility? Because every report requires staffing resources to develop. And I have said this every single time we ask for a report, is this how we want to obligate staff time? And this here is, we got the 2G report. What more would we would find actionable? Yes, Anthony?
Oh, I was just gonna provide with one piece of clarification there, where this isn't so much saying what needs to be included in what's reported. And if you looked at the language that the deputy auditor sent with his email, he had included in the proposed language an email, which I think maybe in an attempt to provide the agency with the flexibility to have this just be like, hi, here's a little note that this project is delayed, it would hinder the agency from potentially, coming into committee and telling you that there was going to be a delay. But this is more establishing that there is this trigger point of a delay by 1 year or more for any reason. It needs to come to the General Assembly. And it's not just the House and Senate Committees on Transportation. This would be going to the representatives for the district where the project is. So it's not so much saying what needs to be reported, it's saying when and to who a delay needs to be reported. And then the earlier piece of language, that's just lowering the threshold for when things need to end in the white.
Regardless, even as you presented it, it requires staff time.
Yes.
To send out that information. I know we even get emails now when you're doing a culvert replacement in your district, and you're having a meeting. And most of the time, you know, I'm not going to the meetings, I have to tell you, but, so I guess still, it's really prescribing a method that would routinely move out information to,
Yes.
to the part, and I guess,
Well, it's a slippery slope.
is it, and what will be the value, the utility that we would get, project by project, as opposed to when you come, as Senator Ingalls said, that you would get through your normal, review process in the, transportation bill? And what is the time it takes to do it and set up this system? And I guess we're not indicating that it would change much.
And I think if there's a local rep that cares, like on projects that have been in my towns,
You contact them.
yeah, I contact them because the select board contacted me, it's
Right.
like, what's up with this project?
Yeah.
So then I call Aaron or somebody and they say, yeah, this is what's going on.
I tell them, I ask them to respond to the constituent, but let them. Instead of doing it between, I just say, would you please call Mrs. Jones, explain what you're doing, that way they can answer the question.
This looks like something the House would create.
Oh, no, booked into
Sure.
I bet you're.
a low blow.
Go right ahead.
Yeah, I'm not convinced that the reporting language is necessary for all the reasons already articulated. I'm seeing sort of two pieces to this. Okay, so the other piece I'm curious to hear more thoughts on, which has to do with the first highlighted section. Whenever I see an absolute number like $8 million, I always wonder, how long has it been 8 million? I like the percentage piece, but did you chime in on the thoughts about these two thresholds that are currently in statute that are pondered for adjustment?
Well, the numbers, the triggers that are currently in statute for the construction projects are not suggested to be changed. Am I correct on that, Isaiah?
So it says all projects for which the estimated cost.
So this would be removing the current 10G requirements and replacing them with this.
It would be shifting the 8 million amount and the 100% increase. And it's just from the prior fiscal year estimate, it's saying go back all the way to when it was first included. So there's gonna be this like escalation factor if it's increasing by like 50% each year as the project goes out. So I think it would have a broader, it would capture a lot more with both if the $8 million was lowered, if the 100% was lowered to 50%, and with the look back being a further look back. So I think there are three ways that it could increase.
Yeah, from the initial.
If we think about the rail yard enterprise project, which the city of Burlington is attempting to work on right now, hasn't even gone through the NEPA process with the Federal Highway Administration yet. We originally thought that might be a $5 million project. And I would say when all is said and done, it could be a $40 or $50 million project. So every step of the way, each, probably during the course of a year, the price estimates, depending on what they've learned, oh, the soils are dirty, or all the stormwater treatment needs to be done. We then escalate, and when you start with $100,000 or $1 million, and 50% or whatever the percentage is, ends up like that could be a lot of updating as time goes forward. I think the current 10G report provides very transparent information when we have had significant changes in construction costs or delays for projects, and that those are worthy of focalizing on. To take this to every project the agency develops, whether it's a culvert project or a reconstruction of Route 2, would be incredibly administratively burdensome, whether it's a percent or a dollar amount. So
Does the committee feel we need a response?
I don't feel we need a response.
Well, we
I mean,
obviously.
I think we're in agreement. We don't need it. We don't want to put more burden on this, but do we have, do we have to give a response? That's all I'm saying. Is that, what would be the best way?
I feel that we're very well informed and
Senator Murphy, you got a question about that?
Is there any tracking AOT from the, I know we track once you get to the construction phase, but is there any tracking of estimates in final? Like in the books or anything, like, do we use that number?
Well, we track it in that we could look back at any particular project and see what it was, but we don't track it in terms of a performance measure right now.
Or there's nowhere, like, if somebody wanted to see, like, how are we doing with our estimates? Like,
What we compare is our contract estimate that our engineers develop to the low bid that comes in from the contractors. So we compare that within a range to make sure that we're estimating our projects appropriately at that sort of final phase where we do have a really great handle on what that project is. So we compare that and we try to get within 10% of what the low bid comes in at, and that's the performance metric that we use for the cost.
which would cover the same thing. It seems like you're saying that if you're tracking what your original estimate was and what the low bid, I guess that the low bid could have been on a different estimate. Like the RFP could have been higher than the original estimate. I guess the only concern would be if AOT was purposely underestimating projects for some reason to get more of them in the book or something. I don't know why you do that, but that would be the only thing I.
That's the last thing you want to upset more people.
My
Yeah, 'cause
concern
there'd
is
just
that
be
they
more
might
projects.
overestimate them to avoid the triggering, so that then you could say, gee, look at how good we are, we're bringing all these projects in under original estimates. So I can see it could work both ways, frankly.
You would usually, yeah, they would overestimate
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know that, you overestimating, playing the game.
or underestimating. Just that. Now, I can't see I mean, I could see why you want an auditor saying it's tighter as they looked at all the projects, but I'm not seeing the need.
And once the
to have it on
project
all the projects.
has been bid and started, that was viewed as really very, there wasn't any findings there.
Right,
That earlier phase.
that's why we have an auditor. Every once in a while, I can look at all the projects.
Yeah, I mean, I think about the earlier stage, what's happening. So even when we get to like 60% design, by then we would have, at 30% design, it's like, oh, we just want to put like a roadway through here. Then we go to public meetings. Oh, we want a roundabout. Oh, we want a sidewalk. We want a bike path. We want the line striping different. So then we go to 60% design, and the costs have increased radically because it seemed reasonable based on other factors that those suggestions could be incorporated. So now we're at 60% design with all those factors incorporated. Then we go to actually 50 or some other permit and agency, and they're like, oh, well, while you design for, these things,
Add a bike path.
there's something else that we think would be important. I don't know, I'm just making this up.
Yeah.
And so then the cost escalates again. So it's just very dynamic. in
It's very
design.
iterative, and
Yeah.
particularly if you're getting out into communities.
I think with $1 million budget is what we have, it's about as clean as an audit is gonna find.
Senator, would Kevin be able to speak?
What's that?
Is it okay if Kevin
Oh,
joins?
sure.
Sure.
Yeah,
He is
go ahead.
able to speak.
I am able to
Permitted.
speak, yeah, unfortunately.
He's
So
permitted to
for the
speak.
record, Kevin Murphy from V-Trans and Asset Management. I think to Michelle's point as well, one of the things that happens when we do see those cost escalations for those projects that are in the capital program in front of the book reports, every year that level of information. If that project is in the front of the book report for those 4 years, if it goes from 15 million to 18 million, every year when we report that out, it's in the book, and that change is documented in there. And there's just a lot of, this discussion, one of the things that comes to my mind is what we just saw for inflation, what we would be probably doing, what we've seen in the last 18 months or so, we would be notifying almost on, maybe not every project, we'd be sending out a notification that the project has increased, and at least in my mind, that is captured. We report on it holistically, but we also report on it in those front of the book reports that you see on an annual basis.
You're basically saying, this is the structure by which we're getting that information already.
Yes.
I'm really glad we had this conversation. You know,
We owe it to him. I'm not glad we had this conversation. I've known Tim, and a lot of us know Tim for years. He's really sharp what he does, but we also have an answer of why it isn't feasible, because why spend all that time and effort when you're not doing anything illegal, you're trying to get the project done. Why would you muster it, screw it up? That's my simple solution.
Well, I think from my major takeaway from that audit was the lack of documentation. And obviously you're doing that as every time you go through an update, something else got added or modified. And it was the absence of being able to go back and understand why something started at one estimate and ended up substantially different at the point it, went out to bid and actually got implemented. And that, you say, is now in place. That system is now in place.
Tim, I hope you're listening. We've done 2 minutes quite a bit of our program, so. Okay, anything else? I think we've done it all. I think the consensus is that we do not react.
We'll use our existing structures to get, my overriding concern is the benefit and the utility of such measurable importance that it warrants the level of staff and commitment that it would require. And it seems like in this environment right now, particularly high inflation, which 2 years ago we would never have anticipated. We'd be getting emails from you daily.
And your email addresses can change every 2 years.
Oh, that's true. Thank you for reminding us.
We're making progress on the bill. Is there anything that anybody wants us to, you're coming in tomorrow, so we're making progress, we're getting there. So is there anything else that anybody's thought about, or just want to talk to anybody else?
So I have about 3 or 4 changes that I'm gonna propose tomorrow, but I think V-Trans is all fine with them, so I've been doing a lot of emails, but.
Could you give us a clue?
Yeah.
No, let's wait.
The suspense is killing me.
Do you decide sit on your computer 24/7, think of ways you can screw up down the state or whatever?
What I do, but these are all innocuous, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Do you want to walk through any of them?
Yeah, might
I can
well.
tell you what they are.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we've already been working on it.
And just the lemon law, I couldn't remember that lemon law, that's in the DMV bill.
The lemon laws in the DMV.
One of them is the database thing that you highlighted. I've just got some alternative language. I met with Sean Naylor. I think this language is crisper, cleaner. So he said he'd be happy to come in and talk about the language as well.
And he's fine with your language.
Yeah, I won't speak for him, but yes, he said my language is better.
So then I'll get your, I
Amendments you're gonna offer, we're gonna have some next month too, or?
I think I'm down to 3.
think it's just 2 actually. So there's the changing,
I'm
avoiding
surprised.
using.
Yeah. Don't you ever do that
I'm
before.
transparent.
Cheryl Rivers did that to me once, and she never did it again. She gets up there and she voted against the bill and never told the committee anything, and that was a shocker.
Everybody.
You got anyone, any
Yeah,
amendments
go ahead.
that you are popping out tomorrow?
So,
I think it's just your e-bike certification, and the committee already
yeah.
told me to include that. So that won't be like a separate thing. So I'll get your stuff
I did
edited.
a sign that points into my store.
And no, internally.
Is Michelle still here? Yeah. About the speed limit, the Kitchell amendment, did you see that? The House,
So
V-Trans changed their position?
So you got an email from Michelle, but I also sent an email to all of you this morning with
We'll pose it now?
a lot of
Well,
information.
we've been digging into it much more intensively. And
You're not for safety. I'm gonna create a false dichotomy here. If you don't support it, you don't believe in safety. That's what we do that all the time.
we love and believe in safety. That's at the top of
It's
our.
the fact that all the signs, 2 million of them all say 50 unless otherwise posted.
2 million or 2?
I don't know. 2
Well,
million
at the
signs.
entrances to the state, the signs do say 50 unless posted out otherwise. And we've gotten further feedback from Federal Highway Administration and in reviewing the MUTCD, which Anthea has taken a deep dive into.
I'm taking a deep dive into one sentence. It's taking a deep dive into 1,000
Anyone who
pages.
takes a deep dive into
Yeah. The
needs help.
the recommendations are that adding this additional sign that does not relate to what you're going to be encountering right away, unless you happen to be coming into the state on a dirt road, is going to be confusing for the driver. Maybe by the time they get to that dirt road, they'll have forgotten what that sign said. So it won't be very effective. There's a few other reasons that I won't get into unless we really want to take a deep dive.
What you're saying is you oppose it?
And the recommendation would be that at the local level, if the town is concerned about the speed limits on their dirt roads, if they set the speed limit, which they're allowed to do at whatever speed is appropriate for that dirt road, and they erect a sign so that people know what the speed limit is.
Can they do it on the, as entering the town, all unmarked roads in our town, or
Don't go through the knot.
working on all the towns? That would be a lot more
And they
sense.
can do it without a traffic study?
For a particular
They have to have a
range.
traffic
For
study.
some ranges, they can do it without a traffic.
If they want to go to 25, they have to
Right,
do the traffic
right.
study.
Anything down to 35, they can do within their own jurisdiction. Between 25 and 35 requires study.
Makes you feel better. They didn't like my speed limit language.
So,
And the impossibility of
Follow the speed limit on the
signs
interstate.
with our rural, like the town of Danville has probably one of the highest mileage towns
yeah,
for dirt roads.
yeah.
So in order to post all those roads, I don't know how many signs you'd have to erect with intersections and coming in from Wheelock to God knows what. So the town's not gonna post signs at every intersection.
They're not gonna follow them anyway.
So the league, of course, is opposed to go in that direction.
Oh, they don't like,
They
don't
are
wanna
concerned
force
with
the
the
towns.
cost for towns.
But they had to
erect
do
all
the
the
signs.
Yeah,
so then they're stuck with the default 50.
yes. If they don't decide to do the sign. So, and I would say like probably not every town has this particular issue on their dirt roads, and those that do, I would think citizens would complain and ask the town people leadership to post them and fix them. But sometimes that doesn't happen, so we then bring it to here and try to legislate it from here. But
So you made this comment, because that's in the DMV bill, so did the House agree with that change in the DMV?
so the House is trying to figure out what was the genesis of this, what are we trying to achieve, how, understanding kind of what the recommendations are from a engineering and MUTCD perspective in the town's
Well,
impact.
MUTCD does not apply to dirt roads, does it? That's federal,
It's state law.
that we comply with the MUT.
So it's in state statute that towns need to comply.
So I think that the House didn't necessarily want to rip the language out and get back to you.
Oh, they want to study.
So
no.
I was going to recommend a study. I was going to recommend an analysis of what the cost would be to towns.
Why don't we just, I don't want to do that.
And again, the feds said that we couldn't delineate between the dirt roads and what was it again?
No, so the feds were concerned about adding more speed limit related signs.
Because
at
we'd
the
have to
entrance
say
to the
50
city.
and 30 for
yeah.
dirt.
Yeah, so maybe the sign says, you're entering Vermont down from
'Cause
York.
I thought originally we could just strike out the 5 and put a 3, but since we're delineating between dirt roads and.
Yeah, yeah. So if you're entering, Bennington from New York
Yeah,
State, and you're on like a 35-mile-an-hour road, and the big sign says 35, but then it says 50 on unpaved, dirt roads, and so
We
then
could just make
the
it 30 on all.
person just goes 50, because,
That would be very safe.
So anyways,
If you want to do a study,
No.
I would be supportive, and I would just love to broaden it to also allow municipal-owned roads in very highly dense urban areas to be able to lower it down to 20 miles per hour, because right now it's currently restricted to only go to 25. But Market Street, Garden Street, owned by South Burlington, and
I
schools.
don't know
like
if
that,
MUTCD even permits below 25.
That's where interested to hear the study options from municipal water.
Yeah, but if in fact, then we'd have to change our state statute. If, is 25 the lowest under
But it seemed
the?
like school zones.
We'd have to double check.
Yeah, I know in statute, that's where you're getting your 25 for the low point for municipalities. But I am pretty sure that there are charters, like Bennington, I think allows them to go down to 20.
Yeah, Barry came in on that recently.
I think you might get compensation from these guys. when it comes
The
time
study.
to the charter thing.
It's not the area.
Because I think it was sort of not necessarily really known that Bennington had that charter piece until Barry came in, as my recollection.
Well, Bennington is.
Do a charter change. Apparently, if you do a charter change, you can preempt the MUTCD.
I don't know if the MUTCD says anything about speed limits not being able to go below 25 miles per hour, because the MUTCD has more to do with like signing things.
Maybe this would be a topic for when we come back in January, if we want to do.
But sort of piggybacking off of what Michelle said, they being House Transportation took testimony from the agency yesterday. I think they're gonna have a committee discussion.
Oh, whatever they do is fine.
So you might end up seeing
Enough
reports.
What is- what
Words
is-
to
what is
law.
down
So the database piece, and then you also have your proposals for the mileage-based user fee, the tweaks to the intent language to consider variable assessment fees.
I'm not ready to bring that forward. I really want to hear from Wanda Manoli. I don't care enough about it, but there was another one that we were talking with Kuchenberger, Bradley. So
Oh, the central garage,
yeah,
yes, you just need to pick which option you want.
Option 2,
Okay,
but unless you say option 1's better.
I think there are strong reasons for either option 1 or option 2.
So those are the 3 I was thinking.
Yeah.
But I'd love to hear from Wanda Manoli before I
Then-
say it's
okay.
worth doing, but the other 2 I'm ready to. bring
So
up.
central garage fund option 2 and the database
I
fix.
don't care about central garage.
So the language, if I have to present on the floor, is
Oh my-
inconsistent with
You
generally.
think anybody's
accepted
even gonna
economic
ask you about central
This is why
garage?
I did emails.
What do you want to do, Central Garage?
So it's, I'll tell you in the drafting answer, and then Senator Stearns can tell you the intent answer. It's making the change the agency says is related to current needs with supply chain issues, time limited for 3 fiscal years. So you're not changing codified law, you're doing in session law what they want on a 3-year basis. And Bradley has said that they are gonna flag it
Something
and
you
come
want,
back.
Michelle?
We're fine with the proposal.
You're fine, is there something you need?
Well, Anthea can maybe explain
Okay.
why this is only a
Listen,
3-year.
I don't care.
Because
All
we
right,
hope
you don't
that
want to
the
do the
sup-
language, it does not matter to me.
Because we
It's
hope
just the
the
language
supply
as
chain-
is, I think is problematic.
It's
And I
related
just-
to inflation.
so-
You clean it up, leave it at that.
Supply chain.
So,
Okay, we'll see.
Which we hope it's gonna be, worked its way through.
And if it is still an issue in
3
3 years, you can look at it and do something different in codified law that,
What's the other surprise? Yeah.
no other surprises.
the agency has some surprises.
Well, before we move on to that, did we finish up on the database piece?
So, I was just gonna get the language edited and bring it in tomorrow so that they can
And
see
what
it.
was the mileage-based user for the English?
Not really.
So that was something that I waited to hear back from Wanda Manoli, but in the discussion about rental cars,
Oh,
so
rental
she
cars.
seemed to see a reason to expand the intent to also
Okay.
consider that. But again, I don't care. I'm just trying to make the bill better and
No,
I'm
it's good.
trying to offer thoughts on how I interpreted the language.
I think it's great.
Trying to create work.
Enthusiasm for good
Russ, this
legislation.
is for you. Why, if there's 3 Democrats in Louisiana, North Carolina, they're all switching from Democrats to the Republican Party.
And then the agency has 2 proposals, bicycle safety and green signal lamps.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, those are.
Oh,
already-
green signal lamps?
No,
They're in
we're
part
not,
of that.
we're not going to.
Well, it's been yeah, we talked about that a while ago.
Yeah.
Secretary,
I had Joe Flynn,
No, this is,
Secretary came up with it.
And the other
after
day-
the-
But it's just a proposal, it's not in the house.
no, I made a remark today when I saw him, I knew it was his. I said, you know, somebody's considering a stupid idea of putting green lights on dump trucks. I said, why would you want to put a green light on the back of a dump truck? That means go, past me, or something. And he didn't say anything about it, so I was, Joe Flynn.
Oh, yeah.
So we do have Todd Law prepared to come in and talk about this as a safety measure. It's being done nationally at a number of DOTs, and we have some video footage of kind of helping you understand, like in a snowstorm, what does this look like? So
Green is better.
apparently green is better. So if.
What does that mean? It means truck is a plow? Is that something?
Plow truck, that, yeah, that, you know, like you see the orange light ahead, you know there's a plow up there. And then this would be apparently easier to be seen in a snowstorm.
But
than-
does it mean you pass or? I mean,
It just means there's a vehicle.
well, I see a green light, you go. I mean,
Right.
that's what I'm saying about green.
So what would replace the orange light?
Either additive or replace.
Some of
honestly,
those are blinding when you get close to them. They really are, bright.
So we could arrange for Todd Law to come in if you'd like to hear more about a green light, or we can.
Are you asking it to be added to the TV?
They want to study?
Yeah, we're asking it to, no study, we're asking it to be added to the T-bill.
Well, we need a little humor. That might be a good humorous one. It's just,
Yeah, you could report that.
yeah, let me do
And the
that. Dave.
highlights,
Yeah, yeah.
with the
yeah,
highlights,
yeah.
and I would like to bring to your attention,
Oh,
you know,
God.
one of the important changes here, green lights. Hey, what's his name, from Rutland, Butch, when
Well,
Butch.
yeah, I got
yeah.
a purple light after 20 years.
Wait, no, that's for
The
Undertaker.
blue light, the blue light. And the other day, I don't know if I told you, our fire truck in Colchester went by the store and I happened to see the flashing light. I looked at the back, there's no blue light on our fire truck. So yeah, towns don't have to do it. I guess they don't have to.
No.
No, it's just an optional permit that they can get.
Gotta get a disco ball for yours.
I did disco ball. I think I like the disco ball idea.
Okay,
Um,
anything else?
And then the only other thing I was gonna mention was if, since Senator Chitton didn't ask me about the progression of, H53, which is the driver's license suspension bill, where it had gone in the House, and that was, initially referred to, I think House Transportation, but it was then sent to House Judiciary. House Transportation had a drive-by, it went to House Ways and Means, and then on the Senate side, it went to Senate Judiciary and then Senate Finance, and it's on your notice calendar. There,
It has a $200,000 revenue impact.
yeah, because there is not going to be the payment of the statutory $80 reinstatement fee by people whose licenses are suspended for non-payment of moving violations, because the bill would be eliminating those suspensions. There are a number of documents posted to Senate Finance. There's a fiscal note. There's a 2-page history of efforts to address driver's license suspension issues in Vermont. And there's a 1-page summary of the bill. So there's a lot out
So
there.
if someone loses their license for DUI like 3 times.
Doesn't relate to this.
No.
This is just like rolling through a stop sign, getting a speeding ticket, parking in front of a fire, no, that's not a good.
That's not moving violation.
We
So if
used to
it's,
suspend licenses for a whole lot of things, for
Yeah.
example, non-payment of child support.
that one's still, that's federal, so that still happens.
Yes, that's still.
All my
So-
licenses, I have to put on there that I'm not paying, I'm not delinquent on child support.
Where you don't owe taxes to the state of Vermont.
Yeah,
But a big change that happened was it used to be that your license could be suspended for a non-moving violation. So if you had, like, your tail light was out and you got a ticket for that, and then you didn't pay it, then your license could be suspended. And the length of the suspensions used to be a lot longer. They're now just limited to the non-payment of a moving violation, anything that you would get points on your license for, and it's 30 days or until you pay the amount owed. It doesn't change anything with respect to suspensions for like the immediate suspend or the mandatory suspension for negligent operation, for the DUI stuff, the suspensions for non-payment of child support, which is the federal piece, or for the accumulation of points. So if you still accumulate your 10 points, your license will be suspended, but you wouldn't have your license suspended if you couldn't pay the tickets that were associated with those points. And the estimate is that because a universe of licenses will not be suspended, that it's going to be a loss of $200,000 to the transportation fund and the $80 reinstatement fee. So that's, I think, the bill in a nutshell. And I think it was unanimous with one present, with one absent in Senate Finance, and unanimous in Senate Judiciary. And they have a small amendment.
Michelle, you also, I think you told me about my, or the committee's bicycle.
Yep,
Yes,
we have the bike safety language, yep.
Okay, so we'll go over that probably tomorrow too.
Like safety?
Yeah, so they put something together, so. Anything else? You got the-
No, that's it. So what I'll do is I'll get Senator Chittenden's 2 language proposals edited. The amendment has already been edited and you all have it. And then I will try and send to the committee, when I send it to Mike for posting, just copies of everything so that you have it in advance. But it'll be 2 proposals from the agency, your draft amendment.
Grammatical change, when, where.
Yes, that will be in draft 2.1. There's also going to be a small change to the technical corrections. There are 2 rail projects that need to get taken out. They were included in error. So there will be a draft 2.1 that reflects what proposals you incorporate from the side proposal pieces, a grammatical correction from Senator Chittenden that the editors liked.
She doesn't sleep. It's over the weekend. We probably had, I want to say 50 emails over this. and
You're up.
Trying to understand the bill.
You know, Vince will do good. I think you're getting pretty tight with him.
I'm not trying to sneak anything in.
Who's interested?
Well, while we're at it,
There is also the thing we talked about this morning. I assume that language will come forward.
I'm waiting to get some language and that I think that'll
Well, the
probably,
fleet language.
yeah, not be something that will be, I think that'll be a side proposal for draft 2.1.
Sure.
Anything or think we're forgetting? Yeah, we think we got everything. Nothing else pops up.
Well, I think the one thing that, which you have talked about is the fees.
Yeah.
And as I've said, we can remove the fees from the T-bill and deal with them have them travel in the budget. Once they're reviewed and.
Because right now, we're the highest of 5 states, we're the highest on our fees right now.
So,
Because,
so that's the question. Do we want to amend the
We do
bill as it's coming out of here? And then the fees travel after they're reviewed by finance to go in the budget rather than in the T-bill.
I'd be in favor of that.
Have they started talking about it or it's just on your?
I think it was put on our radar yesterday, but since they were in the underlying bill from the House, this bill, even if we strip it out, has to go to finance. And so I think the discussion will be there. That's my understanding.
It doesn't necessarily, they have to be reviewed though.
So
That's,
I think this would be a Secretary Loomer question, and I think it would be interesting if they get added to the big bill. Would that then have the big bill get referred to?
that's why we're
Senate
doing it
Finance.
with Senate Finance review in advance of the language, which is what we do with a lot of bills.
And then the one thing to flag for you, Senator Kitchell, and Senator Perchlik, since on that committee, is if the fees end up anywhere, there is going to be an inconsistency that can't be harmonized post enactment with the
I know.
milk collar permit.
I know, Chris and I already talked about it.
Okay, so we have the draft language, you just kind of need to decide where it goes, S99 or
And
somewhere
there's also the
else.
elimination of the 1 fee, which the fees updated
Yeah.
and the other.
I think we ought to put them both together. We double our pay and raise fees. The same
Put them in the
thing.
same bill.
That would be a wonderful thing to go home to and tell your people, like, double my pay. I voted double my pay and I'm increasing fees to pay my pay.
And the
then-
payroll tax.
And the payroll tax, yeah, and the payroll tax is coming, yeah. Ooh, God, what a year. Okay, thank you
And they're
very much.
taking testimony on the motor vehicle from John Zacconi this morning in House Transportation. I think
Okay,
it's
good.
going on right now, so.
Okay,
I
great.
don't know what's that.
All the stuff that we talked about got to, like, people that were working on there are going, well, that intelligence somehow flowed.
I think that there's a lot of questions and information floating around. I don't know if anything is going to change in the miscellaneous motor vehicle bill, but could be that it's
So they're
something
looking
that's
at-
looked into.
Okay.
Would you have any commentary that you feel comfortable offering regarding towing discussions going on in the House?
Ooh, that's all this afternoon and tomorrow morning.
Okay, she will have some information for us.
So they're taking like 3 hours of towing testimony this afternoon, and I think an hour of towing testimony tomorrow morning.
The one thing was the lien piece,
Yeah,
which got
the,
us into an area that,
so I think
Bobby
the,
Starr's not happy about
the lien
The lien.
piece is the sort of biggest thing that people are concerned about, but then there's also the question of, should there be more consumer protections in general? Should there be more oversight of the towing industry? They're hearing from the AG's office and the Consumer Protection Division over there.
but that's outside the realm of transportation. That really gets into,
So there's been a consumer protection towing bill introduced, I think every biennium for the last 4 bienniums at least.
and it goes
And
to
it's always been
transportation.
referred to House Transportation. So Representative Rachelson is coming in to testify on that tomorrow morning. And then the motor vehicle, we get the name wrong, but the Bus and Truck Association that William Smith represents,
I
they
saw that.
proposed to House Transportation, I know this just because the language has been posted, that all of the towing sections, so all 4 of them, including the ones that were basically included in the miscellaneous motor vehicle bill last year that didn't make it, be pulled out and replaced with a study. So that is something that is being suggested by.
So did we change the lien language? Because I don't remember.
The lien language wasn't something that you would include.
It's already there. That's just like underlying practice.
Well, there's an artisan's lien for like your dry cleaning and things like that.
You check with your door.
The
We
Check
did,
with your door.
I talked to him and, you know, I don't really know what we can do until it's all kind of sugared out.
Well, no, I don't know.
I mean,
I'll wait for the house.
well, I think the lien part is gonna be a very, very big issue amongst several different, across a lot of government. I think with the towers, and I don't wanna speak to the towers, but I'm gonna kind of say something out loud. I think that if we could get the easy stuff for them, I think that they ought to get, I think they ought to get properly paid
Oh,
to pick
that-
vehicles
that's
up off the road.
And that isn't.
And, but I just don't want to see that get lost in it, I guess. And then, the other thing is just to alleviate the concerns that they had is getting people, to give them the extra time to get the bins verified so they can get those off their lots, to clear up all of that. And I think that a lot of this other stuff is gonna be left to fight another day. And, so I hate to see them lose it to a study when we can help them with some of the stuff that they want, just a lot less controversial stuff.
Are those pieces subject to removal by the House? I mean, because
Well,
I don't remember,
Bill Smith has his
Bill
way.
Smith wanted the whole thing out?
The recommendation, and they've not taken testimony on this, I just know it's been posted to the committee page. There is a proposal from William Smith to take the 4 sections out and replace it with a study. So
Even the 125 increase?
Why?
Why?
I can't say why, all I can say is that the document has been posted.
but when we passed out here, I don't remember us making changes to the lien process.
There isn't a
We-
lien process. So the towing lien is brand new. That is not something that you included in the miscellaneous motor vehicle bill last year. It's something that has been,
That got added this
That
year.
added this
that
year.
got added this year. And it's been proposed by the towing industry in the past and has been, as recently as 2019, it was something that there were conversations on. Can we add some consumer protections for individuals and give the towing company the lien that they're looking for and
So
House
the artisan
transportation?
lien versus, where we extended that
You
lien
made a
authority.
towing lien,
existing,
basically.
Added towing
Yeah.
to that.
And that's the,
I think that is the thing that is causing the most discussion. But in the course of that discussion, based on what has been posted to House Transportation's webpage for today, and I'm now gonna go confirm that it's still there. The Bus and Truck Association, I always get it wrong, is proposing a study in lieu of all the sections. To be changing what's an abandoned vehicle, it would be
Oh, that's
changing
gonna
what's
come back.
abandonable.
to negotiate and keep the pieces that make
Right.
sense.
And you don't know, House Transportation might not go with what they are.
They're just with today, yeah.
But they have documents posted from David Malloy, from Matt Musgrave, from William Smith, and then it's today. and
Oh, you know
tomorrow.
what? The other thing that we talked about was taking our bill that's in finance, or it's in here, we gotta move to here.
I did have a conversation about that, and I ought to say, I think the real answer is with the banking company and not with the signs, but like how much they can actually put on hold, I would charge a gas station is gonna, but yeah, absolutely, if you wanna have discussion on that.
They do that with rental cars too.
But this is at gas, and a lot more poor income individuals that have to fill up their tanks, they put a $50 hold on their checking account. That's different than a rental car, which it has a different customer
I
base.
didn't know what,
So we should have a discussion on that if you'd be up for it, sir.
Yeah, what's the number? 99?
That's
No.
113.
That's what's 13.
I'm not familiar with what you're talking about.
Yeah, gas,
Have a discussion.
gas stations, when you pay with a debit card, sometimes with a credit card, but credit card you wouldn't know. But a debit card, they'll put a whole, when you swipe and say, this is a debit card, they'll just say, sometimes it's a lot, but sometimes they'll just say $60, even though you're only buying $12 of gas. And they're supposed to clear that off your debit card.
But they don't.
But they wait 4 days. So you think you have, I have $100 on my debit card. You buy $12 of gas, you still think you have $48, but then you go to the next shop and they say, oh, your card's, you don't have any money. Because of
Oh,
this hold on the gas.
oh, I see.
Happy to have the discussion. I'm just less inclined.
But the bank said it wasn't them, it was the gas station. So maybe the gas stations are saying it's the bank.
I actually kind of agree it's the bank. I just don't know if we should allow for a large hold on the gas.
They said it was the gas station that's putting the hold on it. So we could have Bergeron.
It's really with a debit card that runs into this problem?
Yeah, so I talked to some people that brought it to me, well, what they started doing is just clicking that it's a credit card, which I didn't know you could do, they don't know, and then they don't.
And then they
hold
just-
or the-
Yeah, they'll just charge your debit card.
So if it is the gas station, then my answer would be, I just don't know if the sign is the real
Why-
fix.
why is it-
Maybe it's
why is it
restricted
just
when the
gas
gas station could put on hold.
Yeah, but I think there
Gas
was,
station.
I guess,
Why
it's-
this thing about gas station?
I don't know.
Uh,
They said if you go in and pay, they don't do it, but it's just like at the,
At the pump.
maybe it's just like at the pump, so they could just charge you regardless. Like they say, okay, $60, whatever you buy, they'll deduct that from $60.
But don't your card have to be okay before you pump gas?
Yeah,
That's a credit card.
the credit card was approved, but on the debit card, they have to make sure there's enough money.
Oh,
But they'll,
it'll go through if there's not enough money?
no, it shouldn't.
Okay.
But sometimes you have $40, but they put a hold of $60, and so it won't go through because you don't have $60.
Oh, I didn't know they did that.
Or they
At the
hold it for
store,
4
every time
days.
somebody comes to the counter and it doesn't go through, they just change it to credit or whatever.
Right, yeah.
So that's because they can't get the
If
groceries.
you credit against the debit account, then you can't get overcharges. I don't know how that
You
works.
overcharge it, yeah, you.
Oh.
I know they do it with rental cars, obviously for damages or anything. They fairly
Hotels.
fairly significant.
Hotels do it too.
Well, they usually take your credit card, but they say you won't see any charges
Sometimes
unless,
they put a charge down.
The whole, in case you have a mini bar or if you have any other charges.
usually I've never had them put a hold. They just ask for it in advance so they can charge it if you in
Yeah.
fact use the mini bar.
I think this is unique and worth our attention because of the impact on the lowest income individuals that just have to fill their tank. to
I've
go
never,
around town.
no one's
Yeah,
ever
this is the
mentioned
first
it.
time somebody brought it up. And I asked a couple people, if they were aware of it, that they use their debit cards a lot.
I don't use my debit card.
I don't either,
Like points to get the credit charges.
Me too.
but I think some people have problems with credit cards, so they use debit cards to avoid.
Building up credit and
I
then they're
got
gonna
some,
bill.
I got some people come in, they go through 3 credit cards, so they got it.
Because they're maxed out.
Try this one.
Try this, try this. I said, you know,
Yeah.
That's,
that don't go, that don't go, that don't go. But we don't take American Express because.
Oh, the charge is so high.
Yeah, that's all. We don't take
A
those.
lot of places don't.
In our business, the liquor store is all credit, stores all credit, everything's credit card these days. So,
Yeah, I love,
I
and
had one check I took last month and it bounced, so that was.
I'm sorry.
I said it was cheap.
I'll be it.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay, I'll see you guys tomorrow.
Yeah.
if you want, we can have, I asked Chris Dealer, Bergeron, what's the guy?
Yeah.
Dealer.
yeah,
Okay.
and from the
The
banking,
bank association. He did look into it. Yeah, when I brought it up to him, he wasn't aware, but he did some research.
and he says it happens.
Yeah.
But are you okay if Sean Naylor comes in for 15 minutes?